Good evening. I'm Petruzzi, one of the Centre of Excellence trainers, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's seminar on the CBT thought-stopping process and how to use it with anxiety. Anxiety. So anxiety can be a very debilitating factor in the world that we live in today. People with anxiety can suffer just doing the most simplest of day-to-day tasks, going to the shop, going to work, going for an interview, presentation, amongst many other things. I had a client of mine recently who had severe anxiety whenever she had to deliver a presentation. Whenever she delivered a presentation for work, she'd just get into a really big frenzy. She'd feel clammy and her heart rate would go up, her blood pressure would go up, and all these sudden things would happen internally and manifest externally to the point she felt physically ill. We did the following process with a few other processes as well, and we hope to not only manage her anxiety, actually embrace doing the presentations. So it can be pretty powerful stuff. If you're a coach or you're someone who practices CBT and you work with somebody else, then tonight's seminar is going to be very useful to you. If you just want to use the seminar to help or get a few ideas for yourself, if you've got anxiety yourself or anything like that, then I'm sure you'll take a lot away from the seminar. Tonight's seminar is no substitute for medical advice. I'm not saying get the medical care supervision to do this and suspend any medical supervision you're doing, yet in saying that, it's a pretty powerful seminar. So I urge you to go away, if you haven't really done so, and get a pen and paper and play ball. If you implement some of the strategies that we do tonight, you'll get a lot out of it. If you just sit back and passively listen, you'll get minimal out of it. So I would suggest that if you're a coach, a CBT professional, if you're a cat, whatever you do, I would suggest to get a pen and paper and play ball. Let's work together and see how we go. So a lot to cover in a very short space of time. Yet in saying that, we are going to cover some very useful information. Take one thing away, it'll help you as a professional, it'll help you help someone else or yourself, then it's job done, as they say. So anxiety, most people feel anxious from time to time. There's nothing wrong with that. Generally speaking, you get up in the morning, you might have some anxiety for one reason or the other, anxious going for an interview, anxious going shopping, if it's very crowded, you might feel a bit anxious doing just general day-to-day tasks if you're under a lot of pressure. So we can manage it, it's not too bad, but when it gets out of control and we can't do day-to-day activities, it becomes debilitating. Yet in saying that, my philosophy is that prevention is better than cure. We're going to look at some stuff that we're going to cover tonight that will help us to take ourselves away from situations where we do become anxious and do feel under pressure. But I have had clients that I've worked with over many years struggle to go shopping, to drive, to socialise, a lot of things really. It can be very debilitating, anxiety. And over the long term, the danger of not doing anything about anxiety in the long term, it can manifest itself into stress as well. It can be very stressful. And we all know stress can be a very serious health problem. Stress, chronic stress leads to a lot of illnesses. They've proven that stress, or a lot of stress, can almost be a silent killer. It can affect blood pressure, heart disease, immune systems, a lot of things. We know how significant stress is over a long period of time. We don't do nothing about it. And the danger with stress, we just don't know how stressed out we are. It's one of the situations where, bit by bit, it's like a piece of paper. If you rip that piece of paper and you keep ripping it and ripping it and ripping it, eventually you end up with a mess. And that's the danger of stress. Bit by bit, you end up in a situation where some people completely break down, and that's not a good place to be. Now I'm going to fire a few questions that if you don't mind, and as I said earlier before, you can play ball if you wish, it's entirely up to you, but you will take a lot more out of it if you sort of play ball. Do you find that you spend long periods of the day worrying? Who's a warrior? There's a difference between being a bit of a warrior, with some people that get concerned and worry about certain things, than being a chronic warrior. And so do you find yourself worrying throughout the day? Do you find yourself feeling nervous, apprehensive, on the edge? Do you feel that things are getting on top of you? Anyone ever felt that way? Do you ever feel that way, things are getting on top of you? Do you find it hard to relax and switch off? Do you experience unpleasant physical sensations such as butterflies in your stomach, muscular tension, dizziness or breathlessness? These are some of the things that we experience with anxiety, and even without anxiety, there are certain situations that you might get cut up on the road, or you might get some bad news, and you can write some of these feelings and thoughts. And the body is there to protect you. The body is quite refined. It's one of the most powerful or the most powerful pieces of technology to get anywhere. It generally copes with certain situations automatically, subconsciously. Yet in saying that, sometimes it becomes hard to manage it. The subconscious mind takes over and it can be very debilitating. So tonight's seminar, we're going to cover some very powerful outcomes. I want you to go away from tonight's seminar. We've got the best part of an hour. Within an hour, we've got a lot to cover in a very short space of time. It's a broad area, as no doubt you're well aware. But what I want you to take away from tonight, which will be quite useful and quite powerful, is understand how our thoughts influence how we feel and how we behave. Understand how thought stopping can help us make an impact on that. So the link between our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviour. Understand how to reduce anxiety by using thought stopping. How to interrupt any negative thoughts with a stop command. How to use thought stopping technique to give you a sense of control of the negative thoughts and feelings. So the emphasis tonight is the thought stopping technique and process. How to interrupt any negative thoughts with a stop command. And how to use the thought stopping technique to give you a sense of control of the negative thoughts and feelings. So we're going to go into more detail this thought stopping process, a very powerful process that we can use to help with anxiety. But not just with anxiety, it can help us with other negative thoughts and feelings as well. So it's not just combined anxiety. I've used this technique in business, gone interviews, presentations, in sports, a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons really. So it's quite a powerful process we're going to cover. It's not just for anxiety, we can use it for pretty much a lot of other things as well. Now, just to sort of recap before we move on and move forward, anxiety is a broad area, as you may be aware. If you're not aware, it's new. If you're aware, it's reinforced learning. Anxiety is a very broad area. We're going to cover a few different areas briefly before we move on and go forward. But let's look at various levels of very different types of anxiety disorders that in the world today we tend to come across more often. So generally we've got general anxiety disorder, we have social phobias, we have panic disorders, agoraphobia, phobias in general, post-traumatic stress, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. So these are some of the different types of anxiety disorders that are in the world today. It's not an exhaustive list, other things as well you can contribute to the list, but they're generally a lot of things that you'll come across as a professional therapist in the modern world. Now there's different techniques and processes. All we're doing tonight is one process amongst many others that you can use in certain situations. So many treatments can help reduce the symptoms of general anxiety disorder, which we're going to go into more detail tonight. So we're not going to go into we're not going to go into different ways to treat it tonight. We're going to focus on thought stopping and one or two other tips and tools you can use as well. But what I would say, going forward is it's a broad area. In my experience of working with people over many, many years, we're not confined to just doing one technique. There are various processes we can use to help people. In severe cases of general anxiety disorder, medication may also be used. Now, I'm not a medical profession, and I don't know if you are or not, yet in saying that, it makes sense sometimes if you're working with someone to be aware if they're under medication. Because in that situation, certainly as a professional, I'd want to make sure that I have dispensation to work with someone under clinical supervision. Now you might say, well, that's obvious, but in certain situations, I was working with people over many, many years, I've worked with people many years, in certain times, people sometimes can think as a therapist you've got a magic wand. We don't have a magic wand as a therapist. What's really important as a therapist, we're very sensible and we're open-minded. And I've certainly in certain situations had clients come to me with severe anxiety and a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, and they want to work with me, and we've done various techniques, and I've got in touch through their consent with their GP or their clinical supervisor and agreed an action plan to move forward, which is key. So generally speaking, it would make a lot of sense to have an open relationship with other professionals in the industry as well. Now what I would say going forward is if anyone's under any medical supervision or they're taking medicine, certainly I wouldn't recommend that they don't take any medicine, and certainly I wouldn't recommend they use it as a substitute. Do the technique sensibly. I'm not saying this technique is going to work for everybody. I'm not saying it's going to work magically for everyone, but what I would say is a powerful technique that I've used with other techniques as well, and I guess like all things, you take away what you will. It's a very powerful process. But in cognitive behavioural therapy, we generally, when we work with people with anxiety, general anxiety disorder, we use 5 various components, and certainly I do. So education is key and is important to educate the person that you're working with, monitoring the anxiety they have. Sometimes I'll use thought records, mood diaries, and see what triggers they have and contribute to their thoughts and feelings. Quite powerful too. Physical control strategies as well, cognitive control strategies as well. and we can use behavioural strategies. So generally we work around those 5 components. For this evening, because of time, we haven't got a lot of time to work with, and we're going to cover as much as we possibly can. We're going to focus on the thought-stopping technique. As I mentioned earlier, there's many techniques as well as thought-stopping that you can use and processes to help people with anxiety and general anxiety. But we'll focus on thought-stopping, which is a very powerful technique, and know that it will take a lot away from the seminar. But before we begin and we move forward, let me just explain briefly the concept of fight, flight, or freeze. Anyone familiar with that? Anyone come across that before? Fight, flight, freeze. Okay, so in evolutionary terms, in the very beginning, mankind, or people kind, as well as we say these days, we face various challenges. Think of the challenges that you had or we had as human beings all those thousands of years ago. You know, we had all sorts of creatures roaming the earth. So really, we would fight, possibly over tribes for food. You know, we would run away from animals that were bigger than us and could cause us a lot of danger. And in certain situations, we might freeze as well. Now, there aren't that many animals roaming the earth these days, and certainly we don't have the sort of tribal warfare we used to have before in most societies in general. But that said and done, the modern world today is different to what it used to be. We've evolved on various levels, yet in saying that, physiologically we still have various autonomic responses in certain situations. So what are the challenges today? What are the challenges today of modern day? What is modern day stress? What brings on this modern day anxiety? Think about it. Think about the world that we live in today. We've got deadlines, we've got pressure through work, we've got financial issues, we've got to pay the mortgage, we've got to pay the bills, we've got stress of family life, and we've got stress of pretty much a lot of things that we do from day to day. You turn the news on, you see a lot of negativity, you read a paper, and that sort of compounds to your thoughts and feelings as a big impact. So the modern day stress, the mobile phone goes, and that can cause you stress. You're going to work, you're running late, traffic jams. All these things really, the mind subconsciously doesn't quite know how to respond. And bit by bit, like I mentioned earlier, it's like ripping a piece of paper. Bit by bit, you keep ripping a paper, you end up with a mess. As you do. And we don't sort of take care of ourselves and pay special attention to how we feel and how we think and are aware of what's going on, then we can end up in a situation where in certain situations, people certainly get so stressed out that they are on the brink of breaking down. And I've certainly worked with people who have suffered severe anxiety to the point where they struggle to get out of the house, out of the room, they struggle with even basic daily tasks. And you wouldn't want anyone to get to that level. So I mentioned earlier, prevention is better than cure, and building an environment around you is conducive to being relaxed. And we'll look at ways that you can do that throughout the seminar this evening. But the modern world, it's not easy out there. You know, certainly not easy in the world we're in today. We've got more pressure. The last few years we've had literally economic meltdown around the world, and that's brought a lot of pressure for people as well. The last few years, you've had to literally run just to stand still. People have a lot of pressure on them, and people aren't aware of how to deal with that. It's very challenging for people. People get laid off sometimes, they get some money, redundancy money. Yet in saying that, that's a stopgap for a lot of people. They're not quite sure what to do going forward, and they're under a lot of pressure. So the pressures of modern day life, you've got creditors phoning all the time, phoning them up, asking for money, and you've got bills to pay. It can be very stressful in the world that we live in today. So you don't take care of yourself, you don't invest in yourself educationally, then in the end you're going to leave yourself open to the world we live in today. Yet in saying that, we can also embrace the world that we live in today. There are many opportunities out there, we see things for what they are. Keep calm, stay focused, stay relaxed. There's every opportunity that we can do well and fare well in the world that we live in today. So let me just give you a quick overview of CBT. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a talking therapy. It helps you to manage your problems by the way you think. So it's not a cure, you're not curing anybody of anything. It's just helping people to manage their problems and see things differently. Change your perspective and you change your world. Change the way you think, helps you change the way you behave, has a big impact on different areas of your life. So by examining your actions and sometimes evaluating what's going on in your life, you can change the way you act and feel. But the world that we live in today, we don't really get a chance to do that, because the world we live in today, people tend to fill their lives with distractions. They distract themselves. They get up in the morning, they get on Facebook, they watch the news, they read the papers, they go to work, they have a coffee, they have another coffee, they come home, watch a soap, they're literally distracting themselves from reality. I think it's really important to take a time out in life and just have a breather and take a step back and see the big picture in life and work on yourself. The more you work on yourself, the better chance you've got of feeling better about the world that we live in. It's ironic really that the world that we live in today, we've got more than we ever had. We've got technology that's meant to make our life easier. It seems to make our life more challenging. We've got more than we ever had for many, many years, yet if you look at all the magazines and literature, it says that mental health is on the rise. Anxiety is on the rise, depression is on the rise. People are resorting to pills and tablets more and more. Yet, I'm not saying that's not for certain people may need that. Yet in saying that, is that really the way you want to go? Is that really what society to go? Have a nation of people on pills or a world of people on pills? That can't be a really good thing. When you think about it, the mind and the potential of your mind and the power of your mind is enormous. And it's incredible really people spend so much time distracting themselves from reality rather than facing reality and coming to terms with life the way it is in the 21st century and moving forward and embracing it and enjoying it because you've got one life. Okay, so CBT can be used for anxiety, for stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, behavioural change. Unlike psychotherapy, CBT deals with current problems from the past. So we focus on the here and now and going forward. So what we're going to focus on tonight is thought stopping and how we can use that for anxiety. Now I would think of this process, I'll think of this just for one moment. Okay, now think about how we feel, or what we think impacts how we feel. How we feel impacts our behaviour. It's almost like a cycle that we go through. So think about it for one moment. So what you're thinking at any given period of time impacts you emotionally. How you feel emotionally impacts what you think and how you behave, and how you behave impacts your thoughts and your behaviour. So to put that in plain English, let's say for example you're walking down the street and you saw a friend of yours and you waved and said, "Hello, how you doing?" and they didn't acknowledge you. How do you think you might feel, and what do you think you might think? You might think that they're ignoring you, and you might feel upset that they're ignoring you, and that might impact your behaviour. You might send them a text at lunchtime or the day after saying, "Why'd you ignore me?" Or you might ignore them. It's a spiral, a sequence of events, isn't it? So one impacts the other. Yet in saying that, you might put that into perspective and examine your thoughts, and you might change your perspective and you change your world. You might talk to someone about it and say, "You know what, I saw Johnny or Jane down the street and I waved and she didn't say hello." What would be a more productive response? Well, maybe she did ignore you, or he did ignore you, I don't know. Yet in saying that, it might that she was, or he was too preoccupied thinking about something else and didn't notice you. And that would change the whole complexion of your emotions, your behaviour. So if you thought in your mind that the reason why your friend, Johnny or Jane, didn't wave back at you was because they were preoccupied and had their mind elsewhere, didn't see you or notice you, then you would feel differently emotionally and your reaction behaviourally would be different. So you probably wouldn't send them a text at lunchtime the day after saying, "Why'd you ignore me?" You might send them a text saying, "How are you? Are you okay?" To see if they're okay. So you sort of get the drift of how one thing can impact the other. Now the same obviously applies for things like anxiety as well, and we're going to look at that as we go along throughout today's seminar. And I suppose we look at here, we all react differently in different situations. What might be stressful for you might not be somebody else. What might cause anxiety for you might not be an anxious moment for somebody else. I know certain people like to go on roller coasters, those big roller coasters at these theme parks, and the thought of going on one cause anxiety for somebody else. Yet in saying that, some people enjoy going shopping. For some people, going to the shop can bring a lot of anxiety. So it's important if you're a coach or therapist to be aware we've all got different levels of resilience and we all respond differently to different situations. It's important to note that. We're all different. Okay, just like an invitation to a party. For some people, being invited to a party can be an amazing thing. You know, the emotion might be excited and happy, fantastic. I love going to parties. For somebody else, they might think, well, you know what, I can take a leave going to that party. It's a neutral thought, okay? It's a neutral thought. They can neither here or there. Party, fine, I can take it or leave it. I can happily stay at home and watch a DVD and order a takeaway and just chill at home. For some people, it can bring a lot of anxiety. They might think, party, oh no, what should I wear? Who's going to be there? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I make a fool of myself? And they get really upset and anxious. And the same goes for many things. Presenting. Some people embrace it, they love it. Some people, well, if they've got to do it, I'll do it. Some people get anxious at just the thought of doing it. So we're all different in different situations. Okay, now some of the symptoms of anxiety can be very debilitating. And I know from personal experience, when I was a young person growing up, I had severe asthma. Very, very severe asthma. I would overcome my asthma, which is another story for another day. Yet in saying that, one thing to consider that from experience myself, it can be very debilitating. The asthma I had contributed to a lot of anxiety because in certain situations I find it difficult to breathe, especially as I was an athlete as well. And certain times I would struggle to breathe. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I would struggle to breathe, and it would bring a lot of anxiety. It's like a spiral, isn't it? You know, you wake up in the night, struggling to breathe, and with that you got more anxious, with that you get sweaty palms, you get more nervous, so it can be very debilitating. And I know from the experience of working with people, it can be very debilitating too. A young person I was working with last year, she had very severe anxiety. She was afraid to go out of her room. She was afraid to walk outside her room. She'd literally have to have food taken to her bedroom. She'd literally run to the toilet and come back. And you might think this is a bit far-fetched. This is the reality, how debilitating it can be. For this young girl, she was so debilitating with severe anxiety, she literally was in confinement of her room. Now, she did have clinical care, and I did speak to a clinical supervisor, I did work with her. The great news is that she got better, and she's doing better now, doing really, really well. This is one technique that we didn't do tonight, I use, as well as other techniques as well. But the technique I used tonight worked really, really well. And she was so debilitated to the point that she literally, in certain situations, curl up in a ball. Just like that, curl up in a ball and be reduced to tears. Just the thought of going outside. Just the thought of going for a walk to the shop. Just the thought of normal everyday life. So it can be very debilitating, anxiety. It's not to be taken lightly for certain people. Yet the great news is we can break that anxiety. The great news is you can get better. If you're a therapist or a coach, your clients can get better. It's possible to get better. Okay. Now, how does CBT generally work? Just a quick overview before we carry on and move forward. It helps you to make sense of overwhelming problems, breaking them down to smaller parts. So for example, in the case of that girl with anxiety, we could start one step at a time and help to make sense of the situation she was going through. So maybe it might be that we can start with going outside and getting the post, or going outside and going for a walk for 100. So breaking things down and helping the person to make sense of the situation. Like we talked about earlier, if you're walking down the street and you wave to Johnny or Jane and they didn't acknowledge you, to help you make sense of that. Because sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy, and some of the beliefs that we've had or have don't do us any good. So thoughts and feelings and physical sensations are connected, like we mentioned earlier before. They're interlinked. And think about it, anyone thinks about and isn't sure about the connection, mind-body connection, think about how you felt at school when you had an exam. You've got to go to the toilet and wee, the mind-body connection. Or before you got a driving test and you feel nervous and apprehensive. So the mind and body are linked. And think about how someone looks when they're depressed. They're like that, aren't they? Or think about how someone looks when they're anxious, you know, you can see that. So the mind and body are linked together. And sometimes the danger is it can spiral. This negativity can spiral and spiral and spiral and spiral. We've got to break it down. Every 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step. Sometimes, bit by bit, step by step, we can help people to move forward and change these patterns. They can improve how they feel. Taking it one step at a time, we can get there. So what's thought stopping? We're going to use technique, very powerful technique, thought stopping. So when you experience repeated negative, unnecessary, distorted thoughts, we can stop those thoughts. Okay? And I'm going to put that out to you right now. Think about it. Do you ever experience negative thoughts that spiral out of control? Have you ever been in a situation where you found it hard to break that negativity? It's spiral and spiral and spiral and spiral. Now, thought stopping, by the way, is not just for anxiety. We can work towards anxiety. I certainly use it. We've got the processes for anxiety, but it can also be used for other negative thoughts that tend to spiral. So you might be at a party and someone looks at you the wrong way, and you think, oh no, what's wrong with me? You become self-conscious. Or you might go for an interview, and in your own mind, you're thinking, oh no, have I got the job, have I not got the job, why haven't they phoned? And then you don't enjoy your weekend. Alternatively, you might have, or someone might have OCD, and they might be driving in the car thinking, you know what, have I locked the door? Have I not locked the door? Have I locked the door? And they might be going away on holiday, and they might be sitting in the plane thinking, have I locked the door, have I not locked the door? And that can spiral and spiral and spiral ruin the whole holiday. So making sense of that situation, breaking that state, you might sort of call someone up in that situation, say, can you go check the front door for me? And if it's not locked, then get someone to lock it for you, if possible. Or the key with all these certain things is putting perspective on it, but also breaking that cycle. We need to break the cycle, because if you don't break that cycle in certain situations, it can spiral and spiral and spiral to the point it starts becoming automatic and an unconscious thought process. Yet, even when it becomes an unconscious thought process, we can still break that cycle of events. So the key is we can stop unnecessary thoughts, thoughts that aren't productive, thoughts that aren't helping us, getting us to where we want to go. Okay, what we can do is replace that negative thought with a positive thought. So let's say, for example, you've got a negative thought, you're anxious about going to an interview because the last interview you went to didn't go well, and you're worried about how they're going to perceive you and what they're going to think. Yeah, of course you can. You can replace that negative with a positive. It's possible. You can do it. You can set or think of a different thought, replace one with the other. And what I always say to people in life in general, whatever thought we have, it passes. No thought is permanent. You can replace the thought with a neutral thought if you think a positive thought is too much of a stretch. So for example, you've got a presentation and you feel anxious the last 5 presentations, you might think, well, feeling positive is one bridge too far. So what you might do is decide, you know what, I'll just feel neutral, I'll feel calm and relaxed and think, well, you know, I'll go in there, it's a presentation, I'm communicating with people, it's what I do from day to day anyway, I'll go out there and do the very best I can and see what happens. So you can neutralise that as well. The key points, and what's really important to take on board with this process, I'm going to guide you through, I'm going to have a go shortly, because the best way to learn is to have a go, but some of the key thoughts is interrupting, or key points, is interrupting any unnecessary thoughts with a stop command. Doesn't have to necessarily be a stop command. Some clients I work with, they use the word enough, or you might use a physical action, which we're going to cover tonight. You might decide you've got a wristband and flick it. You might decide fist and punch. You might decide that you're going to stop. So it's all relative to the individual. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying you use a stop command. You might use enough. You might use stop. You might use now. Whatever works for you. And you might also combine. I recommend you combine a physiological gesture as well. So you might say stop, enough, to interrupt that thought process. Awareness is key. Being aware. And with all things, when we're working in the mind, being aware. I said before about the world we live in, we tend to focus on we tend to be surrounded by a lot of distractions. We don't sort of face reality. Self-awareness is quite powerful in this situation. Being aware. Being aware of what we have, what are our triggers, what makes an impact on how we think and feel. Being aware. Just assessing the situation. It helps us get control. Let's stay in control of the situation, which is key. Break the negative thought pattern to get back into that control. Now, one thing to bear in mind is, with this process, because people sometimes say, I've had anxiety for many, many years, is it possible to interrupt that thought process? Of course it is. Because we're not born with anxiety. Within reason, we're born with pretty much only 2 fears, loud noises and falling, natural instinctive fears. But beyond that, it's just learnt behaviour. It's just learnt responses. So if we learn something, we can unlearn and replace something different if we choose to. It's possible. Remember, no thought is permanent. So even in the midst of severe anxiety, you can reassure your clients that it will pass in due course. No thought is permanent. And bear in mind as well that we cannot not concentrate. And what I mean by that is that the mind will always concentrate on something, but we choose what to concentrate on. So we choose to concentrate on whatever's making us anxious. How are we going to feel? Precisely, anxious. We can break that state and concentrate on something more positive. How are we going to feel? So in the midst of anxiety, if you're driving for an interview to go to a new interview, visit a presentation, and you start feeling anxious, and you're focusing on what might go wrong at the interview, or how you might come across, or you get nervous, and in your mind you start seeing the person doing the interviewing 10 foot tall, and you start getting nervous and all them sort of things. If you're focusing on that, then obviously the return from that is going to be anxiety, and emotionally you're going to be overwhelmed. If you can distract your thought process and put a stop to that and see it for what it is and neutralise it, you're going in there for a job interview, you don't get it, you go for another job interview, you don't get that, you go for another job interview. It's life, you'll get there eventually. Yet look at the positive side. There's a very chance you could get it as well. If you do get it, then great stuff. So we can shift our attention to something different. So what we concentrate on has a big impact on how we think and feel as well. And we cannot not concentrate. It's important to note that. But what I want to do now is have a go at the technique. So get a pen and paper. If you haven't already done so, go get a pen and paper now, please. It's important you get a pen and paper to do this technique. Learning takes place when you participate in activity. This is proven fact that if you just listen to what I'm saying, you might think, well, some of the stuff I'm saying is interesting, but you'll take on board so much. If you go away and you participate, then you'll learn a lot more. So you probably retain 10% next week if you just listen to what I'm saying. If you actually participate, you'll probably learn 80%, if not more. If you do it with somebody else, then if they're suitable to do it with, then no doubt you'll retain even more information. So step one, the technique. I want to go through it yourself. Now, if you don't have anxiety or any significant stress in your life, then you can still play ball and use whatever works for you, okay? It's always useful to work on yourself. And certainly as a coach, a therapist, a lot of the techniques I use for myself, and for using them for myself and using them regularly, like going to the gym mentally every day, every week, you become better at doing it and it becomes easier to do the technique and help other people do it as well. So first step for the technique, I want to identify some stressful thoughts you might have, whatever it might be. So let's monitor what's causing any stress or anxiety. So I want to write down certain thoughts that cause you mild stress or mild anxiety. Write them down. Write down a list of things that cause mild anxiety. So it might be going to a new environment, it might be starting a job in a new company, it might be going for a meeting, it might be going to a party, it might be all of the above. But write down a few different thoughts. It might be driving, it might be shopping. Write down a number of thoughts that you can think about that cause you some stress, mild stress or mild anxiety. We're going to focus on one. We're going to focus on one shortly, but if you can write a few down. Now, having written a few down, what I want you to do is choose one thought that contributes towards the anxiety. So of all the things that you wrote down that cause you mild stress and mild anxiety, just choose one. So you might decide, I'm going to choose delivering presentations or going to a party or going out socially and meeting new people or meeting someone new. Okay, so just choose one. And after you've chosen one, write it down, please. Okay, what I want you to do now is to think about the process. Think about your thoughts for a moment, okay? Think about the anxiety or the mild anxiety and mild stress you've got for that thought you chose. So for example, you might think, well, you might be saying to yourself, self-talk, you might be saying to yourself in relation to doing the presentation, I feel so anxious, I'll probably start to panic and embarrass myself as I do the presentation. So that's what might be going through your mind. So whatever you've chosen, just think about your thoughts, your self-talk related to that. So you might be nervous about or anxious about going to a party, and you might be saying in your own mind, I don't really want to go because the last time I went to a party I made a fool of myself, or the last time I went to a party I didn't really socialise, and the last time I went to a party this was, whatever happened really. So monitor your thoughts. Okay, the example I'm using here is presenting. So you might, this is a real example, I was working with someone not long ago and she said to me that the thought that was going through her mind was, I'm so anxious I'll probably start to panic and embarrass myself if I deliver the presentation. And I asked her to replace that, and to replace that with something different. And what I said to her to say is, I've been in anxious situations before and succeeded. Because it's quite ironic really, the woman I was working with, okay, was in a situation where she said that presentations was the one thing that was causing her anxiety, that's what we were working with. But the irony was is that she proceeded to say she was so anxious, afraid of, you know, making a fool of herself and all that sort of stuff really, but she'd been through situations before which were far more challenging, one would think. And one of the most amazing things really, to back up the statement she said, I've been in anxious situations before and I succeeded, she was a mother, she had 2 children. I've not given child birth before, but I can imagine, you know what, it can be, you know, the pain, and she'd been through that, she'd been through an operation, she'd been through health challenges. She'd been through so many things through her life. She was focusing on this presentation, making it bigger than what it was. She was a great speaker, very knowledgeable. So when she sort of thought of that, she thought, actually, you know what, I have anxiety before. I've had it before, succeeded. So sometimes we're our own worst enemy. You can be your own worst enemy. Your clients can be your worst enemy. There are certain situations you've been through in your life that you've got through. So the first thing she said to replace the negative with a positive is, or a neutral thought, well, I've been anxious before and I've succeeded. And that gives you a reference to think about. The second part of the process was to get her to realise she could be confident. And she went on to say, well, I'm confident I control my anxiety and panic by using relaxation techniques I have learned. So we'd spent the best part of 2 or 3 sessions doing all these various strategies as well as thought stopping, and she knew she was confident that she could use these processes to go forward. And the final part of the jigsaw in her self-talk was, I'm going to deliver this presentation and enjoy it. She was very knowledgeable, she loved what she did, fantastic at what she did. So the final part of the jigsaw was to say, you know what, I'm going to go out and enjoy it. I love what I do, you've got one life, you know, go out there, I'm blessed to be doing the job I really love doing. I'll go out there and do the very best I can and actually enjoy it. And then you've got to reverse it in the mind. But with that, we've got to do a physiological gesture as well too, to build it up, which we're going to talk through shortly. Because I believe we work on things physically as well as mentally, self-talk, it's much more powerful. I'm going to talk more about that as we go on. So just to recap, step 1, identify the thought that you have that's linked to anxiety. In the case of this woman I mentioned, it was presenting, it can be anything, it could be driving test, whatever you think is right for you. We identified her self-talk, what her thoughts are. She said she has anxiety, she was afraid that she's going to panic and embarrass herself. And then we've got to start replacing that negative statement with more positive statements. First we start with a neutral statement. I've been anxious before and I've succeeded, I've done it before, I can do it again. And then we've got to start to say she's confident in the technique she's done and learn, till finally she was saying that I'm going to do this presentation and go out there and enjoy it. Okay, so you can think of a few statements you can use. Now I want you to do that with your process as well. So remember we said earlier before, okay, the thought that caused you anxiety. Now go through this process now and write down something that neutralizes it, and write down something that's positive if you can, and just build it up if you can. If you can't think about it at the moment, then write what you can and do what you can. It's a short space of time, a lot to take on board. You might want to practice, watch the DVD a couple of times, go through it a few times, and go from there. But I will go through it a few times tonight anyway. Step 3, what I want you to do now is close your eyes and think about the stressful thought. So if you don't mind, just close your eyes, think about the stressful thought. If you don't mind, just think about the thought that's causing you stress. This is the best way to actually use the process, is to make it as real as possible. Remember, the mind can't deliver reality, non-reality. Think of a scary film, your heart rate goes up. So if you close your eyes, think about your stressful thought. In the case of that woman was presenting, and I got to imagine herself in that situation where she started to feel anxious presenting, visualizing the scenario, and having visualized the scenario for a few minutes, I got to shout the word stop. And with the word stop, we would then do these incantations we're going to cover shortly and go through shortly. So just close your eyes, really relax, let yourself go, think about that thought that's causing you stress, anxiety, and just let yourself wander for a while. Just go through this process for the next minute or so. Just know what you see, what you hear, what you feel when you feel anxious. Go back to that time you felt that anxiety. And when you experience that situation, scenario again, just experience it like it's in the here and now. Shout the word stop! Okay? And just gradually come back to the here and now in your own time, in your own pace. We're going to go through that again. Breaking your state, breaking that thought process. So once again, just close your eyes, really relax, and think about that stressful thought, whatever it might be, or the thought that's causing you anxiety. Close your eyes and imagine that situation again where a thought would occur. Just close your eyes, give it a go. And for the next minute or so, just really relax what you see, what you hear, what you feel. Really the experience like it's happening in the here and now. Visualize the scenario. And just shout the word, stop! Okay? And interrupt your thought process. Now I want you to just let your mind go blank for a minute, okay? Just let your mind go blank. The key is really, if the thought comes back again, is to just shout the stop command again, which is really important. So if you find the thought coming back in your mind again, shout the word stop, and you can punch, yeah, you can do whatever. It's entirely up to you what you choose to do. Entirely up to you. We're going to go through the process shortly again. With that I mentioned before, you can use affirmations. Some people who do CBT like to use affirmations. I believe that affirmations are only good if they're true. There's no point telling yourself you're happy, you're happy, you're happy, I feel calm, I feel calm, I feel calm, if your mind unconsciously is not processing that. So one of the things I do is I use incantations, use the mind-body link, and I'm going to guide you through this process shortly. So with the word stop, in the case of me working with that woman who was anxiety presenting, we'd actually use the word enough. And what she would do this gesture here, enough! So actually before she went out to present, when she felt a bit anxious, she just went to the bathroom and just went, enough! Everybody ran out of the bathroom when she did that, but what's really important is she took control of her mind again. Okay? And then if she felt anxious going up to present, she could use the word enough. So what I want you to do before we move on and move forward, I want you to give this incantation a go. Then we'll go through this process again step by step so we can learn it. At this moment, there's a lot to take on board, short space of time, but what I would say, take it step by step and we'll go from there. So what I want you to do again, first of all, let's practice using incantation if we can. Okay, let's practice using this incantation, please, because I believe incantations are far more powerful than affirmations. So let's practice an exercise, if you don't mind. Let's just put this process to one side for now. What I want to do is to practice the power of incantation. Stand up if you don't mind. If you're not standing up, you're sitting down. I want to stand up and just really relax, okay? And what I want you to do is, I want you to make a fist if you don't mind. You can do this process, you can punch the air, whatever. What I want you to do is, whenever you feel any negative thoughts coming into your mind, what I want you to do is shout the word enough or stop and do your action. And I want you to then go into the emotion of feeling confident, calm and powerful. Okay? And what I want you to do is to repeat these words. I'm in control of my life, I'm confident and focused, and put emotion into it. So let's have a go. Let's have a go. The best way to learn is to have a go. To give you an idea what I did to this woman, so what she would do after she neutralized the thought is what she would do is go into the emotion. It would be, enough! I am going to deliver the presentation and enjoy it. Okay, to take control back of that and experience the emotion of delivering the presentation really, really well. So let's have a practice, let's have a go. If you're out there, let's play ball. So first of all, just stand up. You can make a fist, you can do the action, punch down, whatever works for you. Okay, and just think about any negative thoughts that come into your mind, whatever they might be. And it doesn't have to be anxiety, it can be any negative thoughts. And when they come into your mind, I want to shout, enough! I am in control of my life, I'm calm, confident, focused, and put some emotion into it. Okay? And just shake. We're going to repeat that 3 times. So let's repeat the exercise 3 times, if you don't mind. So once again, think of an emotion, think of a negative thought process, whatever it might be. It could be around confidence, it could be a distraction, it could be anxiety, it could be anything really. But think about it for one moment. As you think about it and you experience it, just shout the word, stop! I'm in control, I'm calm, confident and focused, and put emotion into it. And notice if you get the feel. Okay, we're going to do it 2 more times. If you don't mind, 2 more times, okay? Can you get the drift now? So let's put emotion to it. Let's do a physiological gesture. And notice how you begin to feel and how your energy is. Can you see the power of an incantation rather than an affirmation? Because if you're doing the exercise and you have a negative thought and you say stop, or you just say the word stop, I'm feeling better, and every day I'm getting better in every way, I feel calm. It can be effective, but probably not as half or percentage effective as incantation power. Put emotion into it. You've got to want it. Some of the sports people I work with, what we would do when they felt nervous going out to play sport is bring it on, come on, and think about the goal of winning and all the work that they put into becoming as good as they were, the effort they put into it. So let's do this process 2 more times. Okay, so first of all, think of a negative experience in your mind. Think of a negative experience. Okay, think of that negative experience. You can relive the experience if you want to. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. It's entirely up to you. But relive that negative experience. What I want you to do now is shout the word, stop! And make a fist and punch and say to yourself, I'm in control of my life, I'm calm, confident, focused, and put emotion into it. Okay, let's put emotion to it. Okay, and let's do it 1 more time. Okay, you shake yourself again. Okay, shake yourself again. And you're training your brain, you're building neural pathways in the mind, you're retraining your mind. So the next time you think about doing presenting, whatever you're anxious about, you start asserting control. And the more you do it, the more stronger you become. Okay, it's like going to the gym. You don't go once and you become in great shape. You've got to go regularly. The more you do it, the more you rewire your brain, the more powerful it is. So once again, the exercise, think of a negative thought. It could be an interview you've got, it could be a presentation, it could be a driving test, it could be meeting someone, it could be anything you want it to be, but think of a thought that's contributing towards you feeling anxious or stressed or whatever, and just associate to it. You might want to close your eyes if you want to. Okay, and what I want to do shortly is again, make that fist again and put some emotion into it. Okay, shout the word stop and tell yourself you're in control of your life, confident and focused. We ready? So closing your eyes, really relax. Okay, let those thoughts go into your mind that are negative. Make your fist. Say, stop! I am in control. I'm calm, confident and focused. Okay? And just shake again. I'm going to do it one more time. One more time, okay? One more time to embed it into our unconscious mind. So once again, when you think of that negative thought, let it come into your mind, whatever it might be, that negative thought, whatever it is, it could be anxious about presenting, meeting someone, anything for that matter, okay? Just shake yourself loose, let that thought go into your mind, just relive the experience, okay? Now, I want to make that fist again, okay? And I want to shout the word, stop! I'm in control of my life, I'm confident and focused, and put emotion into it, okay? And now just relax and let yourself go. And you can use this process as often as you feel necessary. It's a very powerful process, and if you've got a client that you're working with, it might be an idea to go take them through this process. Okay, it's a very powerful process. It might not be a process that you use if you're walking down the shop aisle, but then again, you might internalize it. If you feel nervous or anxious, you're going shopping or you're driving, you might just use a thought-stopping process, like a wristband. Okay, I work with self-harmers, substance misusers, people who've got severe anxiety, emotional eaters, people in sport, and we've used the wristband technique or got into the word stop or whatever discreetly or walk away, take a time out. So there's ways and means to fit that in, okay? And what's important to note as well, important considerations, practice. The more you put in, the more you get out. Thought stopping might not work for everybody. It's worth a go. It certainly worked for a lot of people I've worked with across a broad range of areas. Don't substitute the process for medical care or attention. If the person got medical care, they need medical attention, then that's the way they got to go. And certainly don't recommend anyone not take their medication. That's really important. Sometimes I work with people, they tell me they've got better, they're not taking their medicine no more. Not on my watch, that's your call, your choice. What you do is entirely up to you. I'm not suggesting anyone do whatever. And also, if it's not working for somebody, then it might be an idea to do go see someone to help them clinically. It's important to take that into consideration as well. So just to reaffirm the process before we move forward is, once again, identify the stressful thought that you have in your clients. You can write it down. I use the example here, the woman I was working with was anxiety doing presentations. Okay, she wrote it down. The second step was to get her thoughts on the presentation. She said, I was so anxious, I'll probably start to panic and embarrass myself if I deliver the presentation. Then we'll change that into, I've been in anxious situations before and succeeded. I'm confident that I control my anxiety and panic by using techniques I've been learned or taught, and I'm going to deliver the presentation and enjoy it. And we'd use those statements, and the final one would really focus on the stop command. And what she would do in that situation is to close her eyes. Imagine going to the presentation, and as soon as she felt anxious, she would, as I mentioned, shut the word stop, and with that incantation, tell herself that she was in complete control, that she was going to go out there and enjoy the presentation. So, really powerful stuff. Okay, so once again, you work with a client or yourself, identify the thought that's contributing towards the anxiety or the stress, whatever it might be. Okay, write down your thoughts, monitor them, have a look at them, change them, reframe them. Okay, then what you can do, having done all that, you visualize the situation, relive it like the here and now, and experience it. And as you relive the situation and you start feeling the anxiety or the stress, then you shout the word stop. You can make a fist if you want to, it's entirely up to you. Or do an action, a wristband, stomp your foot, punch the air, whatever works for you. Or you might not want to do any physical action, it's entirely up to you. You shout the word stop, and after you've shouted the word stop, then you can proceed to say the statements thereafter. Okay, so one more time, one final time, write the thought down that's contributing towards the anxiety. You can write down your thoughts on the anxiety of the process. Having done that, you can reframe, neutral, okay, move it forward into more confident space. Then having done that, you can close your eyes, experience the actual event or situation where the thoughts have occurred or might occur, and while you're doing that, at the point of you start to feel the anxiety, probably 3 minutes into the experience, you can shout the word stop, make your fist, and then do your statements, do your incantations, and go forward from there. Okay? Other tips as well for anxiety, which are quite useful, and bear in mind, you can email me if you want. I'll give my details in the presentation. I'll send you the presentation if you want to. It's entirely up to you. I can give you some other tips and tools I use as a professional with people with anxiety and other situations that they have. So other tips we can use, I use with people as well, which is quite useful, is to get someone to write down. You might want to do this as well, so to do the process. Write down 3 situations you've been calm throughout the day. So think today, let's use today as an example. So today, think of 3 situations you've been calm. So it might be you got caught up in the traffic and you stayed relaxed. It might be that your email wasn't working and you just got up and made a cup of tea, went for a walk, came back and you felt relaxed. It might be the boss said something negative to you. If you can't think of 3 things today, think of 3 things in the past week, 3 things in your life. And one thing this does, it helps to reinforce positive behaviour. It helps to realise that you can. Because no one is anxious every second of every day. That's a fact. No one's going to be anxious all the time. And what's important to know is that it's possible to release and break that anxiety. It's a normal response in certain situations, and if it's not debilitating us, then you're in a situation where, fair enough, you don't really need to be too concerned about being worked for, but some people it can be very debilitating. So what I would say is another tip I use with my clients is write down 3 situations being calm throughout the day. So as a client comes to me, like the woman doing presenting, I asked every day to write 3 things before she went to bed that she handled really calmly. And we start rewriting the brain bit by bit. Remove the label. Some people come to me to do some work, they say they're an anxious person. Nobody's an anxious person. Don't make it your identity. You've not got a label on your head saying anxiety or anxious person. Separate your identity from the behaviour. You might be anxious in certain situations, yet you're not an anxious person. It's like someone who gets anxious when they're flying. 100 planes might fly over their head day by day. It doesn't mean they're all ducking for cover like that, because it's not in their conscious awareness. So nobody's an anxious person. Remove the label. Okay? You might only be anxious in certain situations for a small percentage of that day. The woman I work with says to me she's an anxious person. When we isolated it, she was far from being anxious. She did many things very calmly and confidently, yet whenever she sort of thought about presenting, she felt anxiety. And there's a very small proportion of the day. So it's really important to remove that label. Okay? Very important. So if you call yourself anxious, if your clients call themselves anxious, you're not an anxious person. You are anxious at certain times, in certain situations. Okay, other tips as well, which are quite useful for people who've got anxiety as well, that I use, is remove the triggers. Okay, certain things that can trigger anxiety if possible. Remove triggers. So for example, if you're on a weekend, you have a relaxing weekend, don't bring the phone. If throughout the week you've got a stressful job and whenever the phone rings you feel anxiety, then remove it. Take the trigger away. Certain people I work with, they become anxious when they go on Facebook. They compare their life to somebody else. A woman I worked with a year ago, whenever she logged on social media, she became really anxious because she looked at her life and compared life to somebody else's life, which is a recipe for disaster, by the way. So I said, well, easy solution. Don't go on. Okay? Or go on moderately. If you are going to go on at certain times when you feel more calm. So remove triggers, because when you think about it, the way we work as human beings, we have generally an emotional baseline. And the baseline is never quite straight like that. Okay, the baseline is kind of curvy. Okay, and throughout the day, most of us, 90% of us, maybe 99% of us, we react in certain situations one way or the other. Okay, so you get to a traffic jam and you might react. Feel a bit stressed or negative. If you're running late to get to work, you're not late for work, then you might put the music on and relax. It's all relative, really. Yet in saying that, we've all got different levels of resilience, and we've all been through different experiences. So if you had a bad experience in a certain situation, like at a party, or in a plane, or driving a car, okay, it might cause what we call an escalation. An escalation is, for example, if a trigger is driving in a car, because you had a bad experience going in a car, then what happens is your body starts releasing cortisol, the fight, flight, freeze response, and we keep escalating higher and higher and higher until we get to a certain point. But we can only escalate so high. And think about what happens to you when you escalate. What happens when you escalate? What happens when you get a piece of bad news? What happens? Of course, your heart rate goes up, you get clammy, your blood pressure goes up, you feel nervous, but we can only stay there for so long. And we start coming down again, coming down again, coming down again, coming down again, till we go under baseline. to a non-responsive stage. When we're non-responsive, when you have bad news, ever had bad news before and you feel completely worn out, mentally tired, you've gone to sleep, you might have a breakup with your partner, you might have lost your job and you've slept for many, many hours, more than what you usually sleep. In that non-responsive phase, it's probably not the best time to do some of this work when you're non-responsive. It's always good to go back to baseline again and look at doing different options again. So last time I did this time I'll do that, which is quite useful. But remove triggers if possible. It's not always possible to remove triggers. You know, certain situations, you need a phone, you need your computer, whatever. We can't always remove triggers. In saying that, well, you can, it's worth removing triggers if possible. Go for walks and exercise. The best chemicals in the brain are produced when we exercise. Going for a walk for half an hour, getting the fresh air, fantastic. Go for a country walk, especially now, nice summer nights, beautiful, it's light till 9 o'clock at night. Go for a walk. You know, get some fresh air in your lungs, get some endorphins in your brain. Quite powerful for anxiety. You know, cut back on caffeine as well. Caffeine, if you drink too much coffee, it's not going to do you too much good, is it really? So cut back on coffee. I'm not saying that not drink any coffee at all. I don't mind a cup of coffee here and there. Yeah, in saying that, it's all relative. It contributes towards anxiety, then you cut back. Eat well. You know, food contributes to your well-being as well. And also when you eat, if you're eating very late at night, your digestive system is strained to digest the food and convert it into energy, the digestive process. So you think about it, you ever eaten late at night, a pizza late at night, you struggle to sleep. So when you eat, you know, try not to eat too late at night. Try to eat 3-4 hours minimum before you go to bed if possible. Okay? Meditate every day if you can. Meditate's quite powerful. Have half an hour where you can just sit down, not half an hour, even 10 minutes where you can sit down. I do an exercise with people where I get them to meditate and I get them to take their heart rate before meditating. And sometimes people's heart rate before meditating is about 90 beats per minute. The average should be between 60 and 90. Sometimes they're even up to 100, if not 110 at a stressful day. And after half an hour meditating, you can do it yourself, give it a go, you take the heart rate again at 60 or 70 beats per minute. And you might think, well, what's the big deal? 40 beats per minute less. Well, if you multiply 40 beats per minute by the course of the day, or however long the heart will stay at that base rate, it can be 5,000-10,000 beats stress less on the heart to keep you alive. So meditation is quite powerful. Okay, relaxing music. I mean, I like a bit of rock music as well to get yourself going and everything else, but there's a time and place for everything. It's worth listening to relaxing music, calm you down, to feel relaxed. Thought diary as well is quite useful. I use my clients again to write down their thought diary and a mood diary to record what they did and how they felt after they did. So it's quite a useful process to use, a thought diary and a mood diary, to monitor what goes on, to become, like I said earlier before, aware of your thoughts and how they impact your emotions, your behaviour, and that link as well. So it's quite useful to do that as well. They're just a non-exhaustive list of tips you can use towards anxiety. There's many other things you can do as well, like visualization, mental rehearsal, and other things like that too. Yeah, in saying that, there's just a few tips and tools you can use to help yourself and maybe help your clients as well. And the big thing as well too, your lifestyle as well. I mentioned earlier that in life in general, we get caught up in this rat race. So you get up in the morning, you go to work, you read the paper, you watch the news, you literally wish your week away to get to the weekend. You get to the weekend, some people are still working all through the weekend because of modern technology. They go on holiday, it's a bit of escapism. And I'm not saying it's easy to do that, but start making basic lifestyle changes. The quote I use, instead of wondering when your next vacation is, maybe you should set up a life you don't need to escape from. And I don't say that lightly, or I don't say that in a patronising way. I say that because I've been there myself in certain situations where you don't do yourself any favours. It's not always easy to make a change in life for anyone to make changes, but in saying that, your health is key. And I know from being a therapist for many, many years and seeing people very debilitated anxiety, I would not wish that on anyone. And I know from my own experience, very, very young, being very young and being anxious due to having asthma, it's a horrible place to be. So my passion is to help particularly young people by doing talks in schools and by doing these seminars and by getting the message out there. You don't need to suffer in silence. Okay, we should all be there for each other. And certainly if you've got children, communication is key, because kids won't tell you a lot about what's going on. Certainly when I was a young child, I kept a lot of it to myself. I didn't know what was right or wrong. I didn't know if these emotions I was experiencing were right or wrong. So I think important as adults that we take the lead, take control, and introduce some of these techniques and processes to young people to help them become better. You know, I encourage people to play sport at an early age to get their confidence, self-esteem, and do some of these strategies. We want a confident, motivated society that we live in. Okay, we've been a fantastic evening tonight, and the journey doesn't end here by no stretch of the imagination. So certainly feel free to contact me on anything covered tonight. My email address, you can email me on info@excelwithnlp.com. That's info@excelwithnlp.com. We're on Facebook as well. You can follow me on Twitter @Petruzzi, on Facebook, NLP training courses, log on. We have various events and conferences that we do and tutorials, and you know, my mission is to get this sort of stuff out there and make a big impact in the world. And my goal particularly is around helping young people become more confident, and it's really important that we're there for young people, because the world that we live in these days is changing. Life isn't the place it used to be. There's many opportunities out there, but also there's many challenges too, and you've only got to turn on the news on a daily basis and see all the things that are going on in the world, and it's really important. If it's not one war, it's not one virus, if it's not an economic downturn, it's one thing or the other. And I really think sometimes you get sidetracked and caught up in all that, and you've got one life, and I think it's really important. The one life you have got is live it to the best of your ability. And I really believe the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your emotions. If you're always feeling negative, down and downbeat, anxious, tired, beat up, worn out, then you're going to struggle in life. You're entitled to be happy. If you can't be happy, then what else is there in life? I'm not saying that certain times you're not going to feel sad, because to be happy we need to know sadness. What I am saying is quite useful to be able to be a master of your own destiny, which is key. And I'm going to finish off tonight with a story I mentioned earlier before. I've worked with many people over many years with various conditions as well. People who struggle going to interviews, anxiety for interviews, anxiety with presentations, anxiety with sport, many things really. And there is hope, there is a light of hope, there is a beacon of hope really. And I always think back to certain people I work with. As I mentioned earlier, one person I was working with last year, literally, or a couple of years ago it is now, she literally couldn't get out of the room that she was in. She was so anxious, caught up in a ball in certain situations. You know, living in that fear for a young person, a teenager to be going through that is horrific. A teenager should be out there enjoying life, being happy, you know, embracing life, going on holiday, going to uni, you know, planning their life ahead of them really, and you know, having had the opportunity to contribute to her life and many other lives and help them get their life back together again. I see the power in their techniques and in these processes. You know, one of the techniques I used with her was thought stopping to get her out there again, and you know, it was really interesting really, because bit by bit, step by step, you know, she went from doing one thing, going for a walk around the block, to walking to the park, to going for an interview, to drive, changing her life in the space of a few months. But it's no surprise to me that this can happen in a short space of time. And the reward you've got if you're a therapist out there when you help someone, I've been quite lucky in life to work with some big businesses, some big sports teams, won a lot of stuff in sport, had clients who've gone on to do really well in the field of sport and business, and I really love it and really enjoy it. But to help someone in everyday life just get their life back together again, there's no greater reward. It's a phenomenal reward that really is an intrinsic value you can't put a price on, to know that you've done your bit to help someone. So you're a therapist out there, or a coach out there, and you go out using these techniques, it's quite rewarding. And sometimes, you know what, as a coach or therapist, you sometimes struggle to see the wood through the trees. You think, am I getting there? Yet you're always 1 minute away from a breakthrough. Never lose hope, always keep positive, always keep focused, because tomorrow's a new day, anything's possible in life. I truly believe anything's possible. So I want to thank you once again for joining in.